It is unfortunate that things are the way they are on a lot of fronts. Whenever I enter one of my states of disillusion, it generally comes down to multiple factors, several different things all coming together to be subpar. For some time, I tried to tell myself it's not as bad as I think it is, but gradually, as the issue continues and festers like a virus, it becomes too apparent that it is a problem that will not go away anytime soon, and it's just going to keep getting worse. There are two words I'm going to use repeatedly throughout this video: wall and gap. In a world where things made sense, if a boy wants to date a girl, he can just ask out a mixture of ones that he maybe goes to school with, some that might be in his neighborhood, and get a date. If the date doesn't go well, he and the girl don't have to become a couple, and they are now fed up to try again with someone else who might possibly be more to their liking. If the boy gets turned down by one of the girls that he asks out, it's a setback, but not seen as a basis for someone to criticize or attack him. After all, there's plenty of reasons why someone might not want to date another person, and usually the only person who knows them all is the one doing the turning down. But even in the event of some bad dates or some girl not liking him back, if a young man tries a few times, he can meet someone that likes him back, wants the same things, and this may lead to a long-term relationship that satisfies both sides. We had the emergence of the computer clown, and they always have the same four characteristics. One, they write something nasty about me, usually my appearance or whatever they think my personality is. Two, they give unsolicited advice. Three, they usually hide their face. And four, they always never have proof that they've ever been with a woman themselves. I was having a conversation with someone who had studied psychology, and they told me that these men are convinced they can escape the same categorization as me by writing things that are antagonistic to my views. So even though they get the same result from women, which is either an undesired result or little attention period, they have duped themselves into thinking that this is normal and that all you have to do is just not complain about it and suddenly things will magically get better. It's really sad because it's not about addressing any problems in a substantive way. It's more so, here's this man that is disillusioned with a group of people who have pissed off a lot of people. Let me kick him while he's down. I've mentioned before that I've only ever had one girlfriend back in 2016 and how nice she was during our time talking to each other before becoming a couple, and that after I agreed to be her partner, it was like she transformed right before my eyes. She was just constantly begging for money, and I got sick of it, which led to me breaking it off and completely phasing her out of my life. This was such a pivotal experience for me because for so long, people, both in real life and online, had hyped up how amazing it would be to have a girlfriend. They would talk about how you get to kiss her and hang out and all this other stuff that sounds nice on paper, but in being with one of them, I was miserable. Back then, it really was just me being upset over not getting a date. But during that 2017 to 2021 period, something within me changed. I had high school classmates who were having children, a relative of the same age as me who had a kid. And this was concurrent with me still talking to women both in real life and online just to try to get a date. I should also mention that this period saw two major deaths in my family and pushed me more to thinking about my own mortality, which I believe was a factor in my growing discontent with the way things were. It didn't make sense to me how I could have contemporaries who were procreating with people they met in school or at the mall, but then I was expected to venture to other locations, sign up for dating sites and apps, and possibly travel to other states and countries just to get a date. I've noticed an alarming amount of women who don't want to have children. So as someone who has not asked out a woman in over 3 years, what tends to happen is that I will be speaking to one, and over the course of a conversation, she will mention that she doesn't want to have kids. Now, I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with not wanting to have kids. I'm frustrated by the fact that the only women who say they like me romantically follow a repeated pattern of not wanting children, which in turn destroys any incentive for me to want to date them. It's as though for every one time I hear a woman say she wants to eventually have a family, there's another 5 or 10 that say the opposite. It's gotten so commonplace, I don't even have to ask the woman if she wants to do this. She will just casually reveal this. I watch couples, I see them with their kids, and I often ask myself why I can't have that. It clearly is not some skill issue, because even if a man dates a woman, She can easily say she doesn't want to have kids, and he'll be just as childless as someone who's never had a girlfriend. It's just another one of these normal things that people have done time and time again that in modern times, unfortunately, has been rendered harder to obtain than it should be. I don't speak for every man. My best friend, for example, doesn't want children, but I do. And much of the reason I'd even entertain the idea of being with a woman is for that goal. If they can't or won't give me that, then I don't want them. Why would I want to be with someone who is telling me that she's going to kill my dream if I have a relationship with her? That in dating her, I can never have the thing I desire most of all, simply because she, and what seems like a bunch of other women, have decided it will not be so. I've reached a wall, and I can't go any further. So as I moved away from approaching, I thought I was safe. I thought that as long as I did not desire or seek out a romance with a woman, I would be fine. There would be no more time wasting, no more leading someone on, no more bipolar nonsense, etc. The first crack in that theory came from my interactions with Miss Revolving Door. Here was someone who I had nice conversations with, spoke with pretty regularly, and was completely satisfied with. And why did it end? Because her jealous boyfriend believed we were cheating and gave her the ultimatum of talking to me or ending their romance, if you can call it that. But as last year started, I wrote it off as a one-off, something that happened due to a unique series of circumstances that likely wouldn't be repeated again, especially if I did away with talking to a woman online. Then we had my coworker, Mixed Signals Queen, and it still baffles me how someone can agree to see a movie with you, stand you up, then get mad at you for being mad at them, then attempt to reconcile and improve in no way whatsoever, only telling a bunch of lies to get out of ever doing anything with you outside of work, until you tell her you're done with her and she tries to retaliate with some BS charge of making her uncomfortable. She's so dumb that her own report fails from her being recorded coming to sit by me outside. But I really mulled over this for a few months. I thought of what I put up with. Her telling me I could never call her. I'm not a call person. How she barely responded when I texted her. I'm not good at texting. And her standing me up. And how I tolerated all of this thinking that eventually I would get the reward of going to see a movie with her. Something that she had agreed to do. Instead, it never happened. And all that was delivered to me were lies and a betrayal. And it's so frustrating because as I recall the events in hindsight, I can see all the warning signs that it would get there. I even had 3 people, a relative and 2 online associates, that warned me she would report me before she did. And since I told them she wouldn't and trusted her over them, I ended up looking like the biggest liar and fool in the history of the state of California. This was one of the few times in recent years that I had been this invested in a real life woman, spending 2 months trying to set up a meeting that she had claimed she wanted to do. And it blew up in my face. This stupid bastard could have gotten me fired. This past summer was dominated by the reemergence of Discord as an app I regularly used, and a lot of women I talked to on there were pretty unhinged. You have the one that blocked me for saying I missed her, the one that unfriended me for asking her when she would be online again, the one that accused me of being her ex-boyfriend even after she saw what I looked like. When I did a video on them, I was venting about how hard it was to just be friendly with one of them, but I also was disturbed by how quickly they can just throw you away. As someone who has been online since the first few years of YouTube, I remember speaking to people on their channels and just going to other sites, and it's hard for me to remember being blocked or unfriended as many times across all the different sites I've been on as I have over the past 7 months on that site. Then we have the most recent example of insanity, a coworker I asked for the number of. She told me no, and then came back to apologize, explaining that she was married. I told her it wasn't romantic, and although she claimed to know that, she expressed desire to keep her work life and private life separate. I abided by her wishes, I did what she wanted, and my reward was getting a phone call from HR about her being uncomfortable with my request. Like Mixed Signals Queen, her attempt to get me fired failed, but the intent is what matters. Because someone asks you for your number, which coworkers do all the time, they deserve to be in trouble and possibly not have a job. All this is to say that I hit a wall. There was no possibility of being friends with one of them, whether it was just talking on the computer or spending time together. I only had 2 crappy options. If you talk to a real life woman, there is the possibility of her trying to retaliate against you in a way that can lead to physical or financial damages. If you talk to an online woman, they can go from stroking you off as important to them to blocking you or cutting you off altogether in a matter of days and make all of your time invested in her a complete waste of time. Pick your poison, just a heads up, they both taste like crap. And the thing that kills me about these guys is that they don't understand how dangerous this is. We have a generation of women who are self-absorbed, lacking in morals, accountability, and human decency, and who view men, especially ones of certain ethnicities, as less than nothing and have no problem trying to destroy one of us over any perceived slight in this ultra-feminist era. This even extends to their online behavior. The star of my Discord Women video would retroactively claim that she never liked me and that I made her accept my friend request. And the woman who I talked about in my Cyber Buyer's Remorse video would say that she was uncomfortable after having a 2-hour call with me and didn't want to tell me because she was afraid of how I would react. Notice the lack of accountability from both of these bastards. I, as a random man online who has nothing to blackmail either of those buffoons with, am so powerful as to be able to make one of them accept my friend request and make the other sit in a 2-hour call with me until she falls asleep. But I'm not powerful enough to not get blocked by both of them eventually. You can call me an I-word all day long. I've never tried to get a woman fired from her job for saying hi to me or being pissed that I didn't go to see a movie with her after I said I would or asking me for my number. These are some sinister skanks. I really feel bad for a lot of men who deal with them because they have this ability to take any situation or scenario and spin themselves as the victim and the man as some aggressor. People never talk about external factors, the things out of your control. For as much as they hype up the gym and having loads of money, all this stuff doesn't guarantee happiness, let alone a woman. If a woman does not want to have children, it's not my fault. If a woman does not want to date me because of my ethnicity, it's not my fault. Over the holidays, and I didn't even bother making a video on her because of how goofy it was, I met a woman on Discord who joined a call I was in while high and asked me on a date after we talked. Then when she was back to normal, she claimed she didn't remember anything and told me one of the reasons she didn't want to date me is because the black men of her past had been mean to her. So because of my race, I'd hit a wall, one that someone else put up, but I'm affected by nonetheless. Same thing when I talk to a woman, including the few that have claimed to like me, who tells me she doesn't want to have kids. I've reached a wall, and I can't go any further. As someone who is acutely aware of his own mortality, I ask the question, when is enough enough? I know I'm not going to live forever, but it seems like this stagnant catastrophe is never going to end. Looking back at the 2011 to 2017 period, as frustrating as it was to live through, there was a sense of progression. Like, yeah, there were several years of just liking a girl and then nothing comes out of it besides her being disinterested. But I remember the first time one of them said yes. I started using stupid dating apps, and that contributed to me meeting the only girlfriend I ever had, who was very lousy and played a role in deconstructing my desires to ever have a partner, but at least it was something different. A year later, we had the whole foreign fiance fiasco, which really was the starting point of things reaching levels of absurdity. All this is to say is that during that time, there were several instances where I thought things would go my way and I didn't feel as hopeless as I do now. Like I said in my long distance relationships are dumb video, if this was me 5 years ago, 8 years ago, I in all likelihood would have agreed to date the woman out of the EU or the one out of the UK. But at this point, the idea of having a partner who I can't touch or do anything with besides talk to on the computer unless I piss out hundreds or thousands of dollars just doesn't excite or appeal to me. I've accepted that the thing I want most of all, to meet some woman who, if she doesn't live in my state, lives in one I can drive to, who desires to have long-term things like getting married or having a family, will never materialize. Some people will say that it will, but there's nothing there to suggest any sign of progress. It is entirely likely that I will have to continue to contend with the same two groups of women, the ones that I talk to for the desire of being friends who self-destruct after a few days or weeks, or just abruptly stop responding, and the ones I don't like romantically but say that they like me in that way and then lash out when turned down. I've reached a wall and I can't go any further. Now let's talk about my job. When I first started working there, it was after almost a year of having no job. I liked it. It was work that I didn't find that difficult. I was getting close to 30 hours a week and free food depending on when I worked that I could take home. The only two issues I had with that job when I started was how far away it was, 30 miles to get there, and the schedule being all over the place. There was also the fact that many of my coworkers were cold to me, but I wrote it off as a minor issue. The first crack in the position came in a wage increase. I will never understand how a billion-dollar company cannot afford to pay its workers a measly $4 extra an hour and has to engage in brazen hour reductions to try getting around this raise. Starting in February, continuing over the summer and over the past 3 months, I have experienced multiple periods where I can only get 2 half shifts a week, which equates to roughly 8 to 10 hours of work for an entire week. Who the hell can live off of $800 a month? I certainly couldn't. Some corporate bootlicker will claim they had to do this so they could still make a profit, but I don't feel the least bit sorry for them because this is all about not paying the people they already have more money, which resulted in multiple employees quitting the job altogether, and their solution has been to hire more people, which only continues the cycle of no one except the managers getting more than 15 to 25 hours a week on average. I inadvertently made my disillusion with the job clear some months back, and when talking with the head manager, who's so incompetent and out of the loop that she couldn't even give a direct reason as to why my hours had been cut in half from what they used to be, she suggested that I could get more hours maybe if I learned how to perform the other tasks of the restaurant. She also said, we can't give you 40, even though I never said I wanted 40 hours, as I had previously been content with 30, and was complaining about only getting 10. So think of how insane this is. I'm supposed to want to learn other tasks at this stupid job just to maybe get the number of hours that I used to be able to get by only performing one task. I'm supposed to be incentivized to jump through more hoops for the non-guarantee of more hours. Because as I mentioned earlier, one of the poisons of being a part-time employee has been the fluctuating schedule, and there's no reason to believe that would magically change if I perform these other tasks. The managers at this job only make $3 more than the standard employee, but they get so many more hours than the rest of us that they can actually survive off of just having one job. If they make $23 an hour during an 8-hour shift, that's $184. If they work 5 days a week and have a total of 40 hours, that's $920. If this repeats for a month, that's $3,680. 2 months of this is over $7,000. Something is wrong with a job when the hour disparity is so bad that the managers make more in a week than a regular employee makes in a month. And it wasn't this way when I started. I was getting damn near 30 hours a week, and now I can't even get half of that. The gap just gets larger. When I first told one of my relatives about how little they were using me, he speculated that it was retaliation. I couldn't imagine what for. Over a year-long period, I have done everything that each manager at this place has asked me to do. I have driven 30 miles on average each time I go there. I have stayed longer when they are understaffed as to make it easier for them to complete their own duties on time. And my reward, my prize, was having my hours cut for the sustained period of the last 3 months. The period of November and December of last year really served to disillusion me. The first instinct I always have whenever my crappy job is barely using me is to try getting a second job or go get another one altogether. This turned out to be utterly fruitless as I filled out dozens of applications, most of which go unanswered, and the few times you get an interview scheduled, there is a tendency for the company to act like complete idiots. Between March and December of 2024, I was stood up for an interview 7 times, 5 in person and 2 over the phone. The routine would be that you get there on time, you explain you're here for an interview, and the person who's supposed to interview you happens to not be there, even though they were given advance notice that you were coming that day. All the gas and time wasted driving to these interviews where they respect the prospective employee so little as to not even bother showing up to talk to him. And just like the managers at my job, they are completely insulated from any consequence for playing with people's lives like this. Now, there were some people who saw fit to criticize me. Oh, maybe it's your resume. Oh, maybe you're underqualified. You know, if someone wants a job, the thing that is most associated with giving you the ability to take care of yourself, they shouldn't have to have worked at 10 other places before trying to work for whatever current position they're applying for, especially when most of these jobs often do not confer that one needs to have experience just to work for them. It shouldn't be normal for someone to have to apply to dozens of places just to get an interview that likely goes nowhere, or having to have multiple jobs and work over 40 hours a week just to meet their basic needs. And are we really going to pretend having a hard time getting a job is a just an issue? There is literally an entire subgenre on this very same website of people complaining about how hard it is just to work somewhere. The second crack came in the difference I noticed between how I was treated and how others are. I am one of the few blacks that works there, and it is mostly whites and Hispanics who comprise the staff. As someone who just observes the things said and done by his coworkers, I notice how they are with each other and with me, along with some of the other blacks that work there too. I see them touching on each other, talking about going over each other's houses, greeting each other, etc. It is also commonplace for many of these same coworkers to walk past me without saying a word, including some of the managers, and to only speak to me when they have to or need something done, which I believe is a deliberate act by them. Just to backtrack to the coworker that stood me up to go to the movies, With her, you had someone who, in one breath, told me that she wasn't a very social kind of person, and yet found herself agreeing to getting picked up by some other guy and dating one of our coworkers and displaying her romantic affections toward him in front of the people she worked with. It's interesting how out of the three guys that she was known to have agreed to do things with outside of work, I was the only one who she tried to get in trouble with the job. Another example, I observed one of the guys that works there walk behind a girl and touch her back with no issue. But if I ask one of the women that works there for her phone number, then suddenly there's a problem. There goes that gap again, getting larger and larger. And somebody might say, oh, you shouldn't try to become friends with the woman you work with. Listen, I don't have any male coworkers who do this nonsense. So it's an issue that is deeper than someone being employed at the same place as me. What you have is a generation of girls who cannot recognize the humanity of the males around them and thus have no problem trying to destroy the life of someone else the second that person becomes even a minor inconvenience to them. This is why you can have a girl report you for saying hi to her. This is why you can have a woman report you for asking her for her number. If any of this stuff really makes them uncomfortable, after they made the report and the person is still working there, they would leave if they're so concerned about their safety. They're not, they're just liars. The third crack in my job came in the food. One of the reasons I was attracted to working there was that I enjoyed eating at the place, and during my orientation I was told that we had a discount we could use as employees. In my first several months there, I and other employees were allowed to get the leftovers that the restaurant was going to throw out that night. This was food that they were not going to sell. This was food that if we didn't take it home, it would find a home in a dumpster. And I really liked this system because it meant that after 7 or even 9 hours of work, I could drive back home and have something to eat when most places were closed down. Now, because one of the managers got butthurt that people were making food for themselves, he issued a directive for them not to let us take home any leftovers anymore. So in response to this, I started buying food from there. I would buy 2 of something so I could have 1 to eat before the shift started and 1 for after it ended. These 2 things together, the same item, would be about $11 with my discount because they were both 50% off. One day I go in to order 2 of the same item I always get, and one of the managers enters something into the machine to make it $17. Her rationale was that my discount only applied to 1 combo. They did this to me 2 more times, and it incensed me to the point of not eating there anymore. You already have to piss out $8 to even get over here. And now they're trying to squeeze 6 more out of you for some food that they told you could get half off? Why even give someone a discount if you're going to do that? It used to be that I could just drive directly from my house to my job. After they started nerfing my discount, I had to go and get food from somewhere else before eating there. They really messed me up getting rid of the leftovers because I could eat for 2 or 3 days just off of that food alone. It doesn't make any sense for someone to work at a restaurant and be hungry. That's like working at a car dealership and walking home. It's sad that every chance they get to be helpful, they screw it up in the mantra of corporate greed. I cannot be satisfied with just barely making it, which was the case for me throughout last year. Even if I were a full-time employee at my job and was making over $3,000 a month, the idea of paying out over $2,000 just to live in a house that's not even that big is insane to me. It needs to be understood that even if your monthly earnings cover the cost of rent, the fact that you are left with only several $100 to pay off whatever assortment of bills related to food, gas, water, electricity, whatever unexpected emergencies pop up is utterly ridiculous. Just as an example, I know one person whose rent is $2,500. This means they have to piss out $10,000 every 4 months just to have somewhere to lay their head at night. You are effectively living on eggshells where if you miss just 1 check, a few days of work, that has the potential to make or break your ability to take care of yourself. It used to be that people would have to team up to buy a home together. Now people have to team up just to have somewhere to live. Tell me that makes sense. Besides rent cost, the cost of living in general is pretty lousy. I went to a restaurant and ordered a set of wings and fries, which was supposed to total to $20. Adding in the cost of a soda and tax, it was $30, meaning that if I came there and ordered that same meal 3 times, that would be $90. It's recently come to my attention that many of the franchise restaurants around me have fluctuating prices. There is a fast food restaurant I like to order from where my usual order is less than $7. At another location, it's almost $9. I went to Pizza Hut and ordered a large pizza for $20. I drove to another location that isn't even 20 miles away, and they wanted $30 for the same thing. I had a few cyber bimbos who suggested that I should move to be able to afford things, and they are really missing the point. Look at Texas. Sure, housing is cheaper, but you don't get paid as much money for working out there, so you can theoretically run into the same issue of the prices being too high and either the wages or the hours being too low. I mean, these bastards really believe that if you just travel to another part of America and then suddenly a full-time job materializes along with housing that isn't ridiculously expensive. It's even more insane to consider that one of them lives in the US, the great state of Colorado, and she admits that she's poor, but somehow she can't put together in her pea-sized brain that this is a national issue. The way things should be is that if someone wants a job, the United States, with all of its resources, should be able to help the person get one, i.e. a jobs program, and the cost of rent should never exceed more than a third of a person's monthly earnings. So if I make over $3,000 a month and my rent is $1,000 or slightly lower / higher, that leaves me with roughly $2,000 to contend with my other utilities. This should in theory be enough to pay off whatever small assortment of bills are left. And in the event that an unexpected emergency does not happen, I get to save a bit as well. Again, there has to be a sense of progression, that we're not just doing the same thing over and over and barely getting by. I would love to live in the timeline where I was married, had kids, me and my partner rented some house that we both worked 40 hours a week to pay for. But those are not the cards I've been dealt. I live with a generation of some of the most egotistical, demonic women whom there is no possibility of creating anything good with, in an era of high rent, high food costs, high gas costs, and jobs that barely use the employees they hire. All of these things together are designed to be as time-wasting, unproductive, and dangerous as possible. If someone took a toilet and painted it blue with some green spots on it, that would be an accurate representation of what society has turned into.